My grandpa was 5 feet tall. And he might not have been a saint by everyone's definition, but he was certainly a saint to me. He was affectionately known as the mayor of 8th Street. He knew everyone's name, everyone's problems, and he was the answer to most everyone's prayers. He seemed to feel that he was responsible for all of our relatives in the old country, and so he visited regularly. He visited with filled suitcases of brand new clothing. I always thought because he needed to dress stylishly when he went there. As I grew, my understanding grew, and it was because he always came back with empty suitcases and left all his clothing for his siblings that remained behind. Always came back with empty suitcases. He visited all of his grandchildren every night. We all lived within several blocks of each other. He visited us every night. He had his pockets filled with hard little candies. My favorites were the sesame little sticks that were little sesame seeds stuck with honey. I loved them. They're hard to find nowadays, but they were my favorites. On Friday nights, he gave us a quarter each. When I got closer to high school age, he gave us 2 quarters. And he always said to me it was okay to give them away. And I did that with most weeks. It would have been a little bit wiser to hold on to some of them because when I needed some money, my sister charged me interest. And she was much more clever financially than I was. But you see, 4 houses down from us was my friend Matilda, and Matilda was from a family of 16, and they always seemed to need something more than I did. But Grandpa had a heart for everybody's needs, and he really believed that that you needed to just keep expanding your friend base. And if you would have asked me who was the richest man in the world, the richest man that I knew, I would have said Grandpa. It turns out that Grandpa worked for a Guida truck company, Guida heel company as a truck driver. Wasn't the richest man in the world. The richest man that I knew was my great Uncle Joe, who was the owner of the apple orchards in the Hudson Valley, and he supplied a good portion of the East Coast. But he didn't seem rich to me because he was always sad and stressed, and so it never impressed me as something that I wanted to be or valued. But what I learned from Grandpa was that what was important was that you enjoyed your life and you shared it with the people you loved. And what was important about that is you constantly expanded that base of people you loved. And the way he did that was by always inviting more people to the dinner table. And the place of honor was the place directly to the left of Grandpa. I always have to do that. I'm directionally challenged. And us kids never got to sit there. It was always this person that Grandpa would meet on the street, or someone down the block, or someone on Avenue U, and they were always quick friends of Grandpa. And God bless Grandma, she was always smiling, although they were usually surprises at the dinner table. And these were honored guests, and he would tell the honored guests about his grandchildren. He would tell them about the accomplishments. So we knew we were his treasures. We knew that. In introducing me, it was, "This is Maria, our firstborn." And like when he would say that, I knew he was handing me the keys to the kingdom. And the fact was, he really was. Because he created me to be generous. He taught me what it meant to share and to give, and always be willing to just give it all away, because that's what he showed me what you do. You invite everybody to the table, give everybody your last shirt. If you have 2 coats, you give one away, because how could you possibly wear 2 at the same time? And you have 2 books, you can't read 2 books at the same time. And that's what he did. And till his dying day, he was someone who was always sharing the best of what he had to all the people he could possibly imagine, and loved all of the people around him, to the point that, and I know I've told many of you this story already, each of his grandchildren stood around him at his wake and said, "I'm his favorite." And we were all surprised to find out that we all thought we were his favorite, because he made us feel that way. Each one of us were his favorite grandchild, and we held on to that because he made us feel special and made us feel loved. And that's the kind of person that God formed each one of us to be: special, loved, treasured by the creator of the universe. Each one of us is special, loved, and cherished by the creator of the universe, who has provided for all of our needs. There's always that quarter that comes on Friday from God. There's always this boundless amount of mercy and grace and forgiveness that comes from God. It never stops. There's never an end to God's willingness to shower his grace upon you. So you're never going to run out. You could never give away too much forgiveness to your loved ones and your friends and the people that we politely in society call frenemies these days, but God's going to keep pouring it out on you so you can keep sharing it. And there's always another place at your table, because God keeps making another place for you. And so in this boundless love and abundance that God is pouring out on you, God has invited us to be stewards of all that we are receiving. And if we can believe that we are partners with God in all of creation and the care of all of creation, then we can be sharing all of this with one another. And we've been talking about this all year, about how God has invited us into partnership to be good caretakers of all that God has given. And as good caretakers of all that God has given, we need to be making sure that the earth is cared for, and the sky and the waters and all the animals and everything that there is. And we need to be doing our part to be those good caretakers and to make sure that one another are loved and treasured and cared for. Just like there was never an end to those quarters on Friday night, there will never be an end to God's love and God's care, and never an end to our responsibility. Now, sometimes that gets heavy. Sometimes we say, she's going to get up there and talk about stewardship again, God bless her. And, and the truth is, yes, it's true. But I believe from the bottom of my heart, it's part of who we are formed to be. We have been created to give. And it's not just financially. We've been created to give of our time and our talents and our treasures. And if we all did some, and all gave some of our time and our talents and our treasures, then all of the people of the world and all of the things that needed to be done would be cared for. And we know that there are things that need to be done, not only here at church, but things need to be done down at the rescue mission, and things that need to be done in different parts of the world. And each one of us takes a little piece of this. And a little while ago, when Chris did the announcements, he pointed out that our Habitat Day is coming up on November 17th. And there's so many parts of it that each one of us can participate in. There's the actual work on the house that day, but there's snacks that morning, and there's also lunch to be prepared, and there's prayers about the safety of the building of that house, and there's prayers about the people that are getting prepared to move into it. And that family's going to join us for lunch next Sunday at our All Thanksgiving dinner, and that's an honor for us that they would choose to come and have lunch with us. And we're going to have lunch together, a Thanksgiving dinner together next week, and that's going to take all of our hands. all of this is part of what we are called to do. You know, and we are reminded in that story from Matthew 25 of that landowner who gave 3 of his servants different amount of coins, and one was given 10, one was given 5, and one was given 1. And you know, the one person doubled and the other person doubled, and then the one that was just given the least amount was paralyzed by fear. Was so afraid that he was going to lose that one coin, that he buried it so nothing would happen because he was afraid he'd get in trouble. And, you know, we've heard that story told so many times that we think, oh, what a coward. And this week I was thinking, boy, how many times have we been paralyzed in fear? You know, how many times have we thought, oh, is that roof going to leak this year? Is this the year we've got to replace it? Can we really think about upping our commitment to the church? Can we really think about that extra amount of money that we might need to give to that special mission? Can we really think about that extra amount of time that the pastor's talking about giving on a Saturday when we should probably be painting our own house? And you know, it's hard. We all get paralyzed by fear. And we all start to think, how much more can I give? But the answer isn't so much what we can come up with. The answer is that thing, going back to 2 weeks ago, what Nick got us to thinking about. What are our life's priorities and goals? And then I asked you last week is, how are we going to align our financial goals with our life priorities and goals? And how can we do all of that so that we can better line that up with what God wants for our lives? How can we take our life's goals and our financial goals and really put them in alignment with what God wants us to do and become? And that's the question for each one of us as Christians. And we say, well, you know, the Old Testament is something from way back when, and we know that as people of the new covenant, we don't always have to worry about what happened back then, but you know, the whole Bible is something we're accountable to, and so the tithe is a good measure. We shouldn't throw out the baby with the bathwater and, oh boy, where did she come up with that? She's obviously showing her age, but the reality is it is a good measure. But we can't always start there, and so if you're not there, I'm going to invite you to think about wherever you are in your giving, how can you step up and move up from the place where you are to the next step? Because you've heard me say it, I believe in tithing, and I believe it's the place that we all need to strive to, and then once we're there, then we need to continue to realize that it's not a ceiling, it's just a good place to start and to aim towards. But the most important part is how are we looking at the whole of our stewardship, of the giving of our time, our talents, and our treasures, so that we are faithful to what God wants us to do and become. Because God has great work for us as a faith community. You know, the Habitat build is a wonderful thing. Some of us have already been contacted, and we're going to be talking to a woman who's going to talk to us about JUMP, which is a justice ministry. And JUMP will invite us to be having conversations about how we might be participating in work that gets us beyond just putting nails into boards, and how we can work to alleviate some of the root causes of poverty. You know, this is what God's calling us to do, to be part of the solution so that no one suffers anymore. But in this meantime, I challenge you to take seriously the call to how are you aligning your lives, your life goals, your financial goals, to answer where God is calling you to serve. so that we truly become a diverse community where God's love can be seen in action. May all the glory be to God. Amen.